Ladies and gentlemen, it is the world's wokest warrior, primitive-sided, toxic fanboy aligned with the like-minded, Tony Tone Deaf rockin' with you. I want to welcome one and all to the Clown World Review. Hope everything is well on your end of the world, whether it's the daytime, whether it's the evening. I hope it's a good one, you're doing well. Me? I'm doing okay. As okay as someone can be who just went and saw the Eternals. Now, not the worst Marvel movie I've seen, but probably the second worst I've seen, only preceded by Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which was just I didn't do a review for that one, I should have, but that was, I can't even call it pandering to China, because in one scene, they're putting down America in order to make themselves look progressive for China. I don't even know if that's the word or just to, again, straight out pander to them. But then in the next scene, they're kind of criticizing China for how they treat women. So I don't know who that was pandering to. I just know it was a mess, much like Black Widow and every Phase 4 movie thus far, completely unnecessary. But, I know you're not here for Shang-Chi. This is my Eternals review directed by Chloe Zhao, and I couldn't wait for this flat fucking movie to end. Before we jump into this, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you feel I've earned your subscription. I hope I have. Definitely tax that privilege button. It helps. It helps. Maybe, hopefully I'll get 23 views on this video, but if not, I'm grateful for each and every one that I do get, including the 4 I give myself when I rewatch the video over and over again. But you didn't hear that part. By the end of the Eternals, and there's going to be spoilers here. I shouldn't even give a spoiler warning. I'm so sick of it. I'm telling you, the Great Divide in America, all the triggered snowflakes, that comes from spoiler warnings. I trace it back to there. So, by the end of this motion picture, I was rooting for Icarus to end the suffering of this messy clusterfuck. He ended up being the antagonist of this movie, the most popular Eternal. Why wouldn't we? Straight white male. Nobody wants that. By the end of this movie, I'm hoping this guy will succeed, and really, he didn't, he did his job. It's debatable whether you want to say he did anything wrong or not, other than he did murder the beautiful Selma Hayek. How dare you, bro? How dare you? But I feel if the Eternals were a smaller team, things might not have drug on so slowly, and it would have given us a chance to actually get to know the team and care for them. Maybe if we had Cersei, Icarus, Sprite, Ajax, and one more character, Druid, Gilgamesh, take your pick. That's all this film needed to tell a good story. Instead, Zhao and Feige felt the need to prove their dedication to the Hollywood projection cult by cramming everything into this film except for a digestible plot. A smaller cast could have also reduced the runtime by about a half hour. Not every movie needs to be 2.5 hours long. And that was one of my favorite aspects of Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. It was wham, bam, thank you ma'am. Venom 2 got straight to the point in 90 minutes. They didn't drag their feet in an effort to lecture the audience on points and lessons that the average civilized human being learned decades ago. The projection cult, they live in their own world, and just as they were too close-minded to learn the lessons alongside the rest of humanity throughout the years, now they're too close-minded to realize that they are not the pioneers of interracial or homosexual relationships, amongst other talking points. On a personal note, my uncle is gay, and I'm talking back in the 80s, the 90s. He was loved and accepted by my family back then when being gay was nothing but a stereotype in Hollywood. It doesn't sit right with me now that they want to get in my and everyone else's face, label us, how they used to and still do label anyone different than them, and preach to us about acceptance. Especially when they have proven themselves incapable of being friends with everyone sitting at the table. They always have to single someone out, and that's a sign of being an awful human being. And that's exactly what this movie boils down to. While beautiful looking, there is no personality, there are no true morals. Just something you may call at 2 a.m. when you're desperate, but it's definitely not spending the night or meeting the family. What a shit time to be a pop culture fan, and I've said it before. Yes, he was an irrehensible, garbage excuse for a human being. But, Harvey Weinstein was the Saddam Hussein of Hollywood, and as bad as things were, at least there was some type of stability. Now Hollywood is a vacuum of morons trying to outwoke one another. They don't know the line, they don't know what's too far, and just like Iraq, it's the innocent civilians who ultimately pay the price. So now that I've gotten that out of my system, let's jump into some of the characters. First we have Gemma Chan as Cersei, and I went into this movie thinking that I had never seen a movie with Gemma Chan in it. Apparently, this isn't even her only Marvel movie, as she played Minerva in 2019's Captain Marvel, everybody's favorite. I guess I just didn't really know who Gemma Chan was, and I'm glad I did get to know her. I enjoyed her performance as Cersei. It was one of the few things I did enjoy in this movie, though I didn't enjoy where the writing took her character. She's, number one, beautiful. But she's a very capable actor. She did a great job with the work she was given, but her portrayal as Cersei is just not very believable in a leadership role. We have Kumail Nanjiani as Kingo, which so much was going on in this movie. I remember at some point, like, him and his steward were getting into the car, and the license plate said Kingo, and I was thinking, what the hell is Kingo? I didn't even know that was his name. And it's because there was just, again, for 90 minutes of introductions, I had no idea what was going on in this movie half the time. Not with the story, but just like what this person's name is compared to what this person's name is, or what this person's power was compared to this person's power. Kumail Nanjiani is a fucking weirdo. He's a grown man with the mannerisms and personality of a 15-year-old valley girl, and it's weird, really weird. If my channel were big enough for anyone to give a shit about, I'm sure the weak minds on Twitter who judge people by their inherent traits would call me a racist for judging a man as a man, but you know what? I don't care if Kumail is Mexican. He is creepy, and his screen presence is annoying, and I think it boils down to authenticity. He has the stench of fraud that just aerates off this guy. You can tell he's not what he's presenting up front, not just to the camera, but to people in his life. He has a dark side, and I'm sure we'll see Kumail in some kind of weird, dark scandal here in the next few years. Mark my words. Salma Hayek portraying Ajax was tits. Like Gemma Chan, I think she did fine in the role of Ajax, but we barely got to know her character, so it's hard to understand her perspectives and motives. And that kind of sucks, because Salma Hayek was probably one of my favorite parts of this movie too, and we just got so little of her because we had to have just watered down corny Marvel jokes and watered down corny Marvel characters. Salma Hayek was one of the bright spots of this movie, and we just got a taste of her. You know, I wish we could have focused in more on her. She was basically dead by the time the modern day story of this took place, once we're out of all the flashbacks and everything. So it really didn't leave much in the way of character development for her, I suppose. So, God, I wish we could have gotten more Salma Hayek, because I did enjoy her. We had Richard Madden portraying Icarus, and I never got into Game of Thrones, and I probably haven't seen as many movies as I should have at this point, but I'm just not very familiar with Richard Madden's work. But he was decent here. Again, one of my favorite parts of the movie. I think Gemma Chan, I think Richard Madden, and Salma Hayek did great jobs. A couple other people on here too, we'll get to them, but again, Richard Madden, he did a good job, but the end of the movie, it bugged me a little bit when he didn't stick to his own values, and he ended up kind of caving and going along with the rest of the Eternals, and he knew he was wrong, because right after he caved and did what they wanted him to do, he flew himself into the fucking sun. That isn't because he felt like he did the right thing, so you know what? Good for you, Richard Madden, for, sticking up for your morals up until the point that a little pressure was applied, and then you just gave in, bro. Why? I was rooting for you. And not because I agreed with some of his actions throughout the movie, but I mean, Jesus, by the end of the Eternals, I was ready for everything on this fucking planet to end. And why couldn't Icarus have murdered Angelina Jolie's Athena? Holy fuck, this felt like the Eternals plus Angelina Jolie. She stuck out like a sore ass. And it didn't feel like I was watching some goddess named Athena. It felt like I was watching someone who never was really ever good at her fucking craft in the first place, cling on to some sort of relevancy after she's out of her prime and out of everyone's minds. Everyone's thinking about Amber Heard now for some reason. Chucky the Killer Doll looks more realistic than Angelina Jolie. Can you imagine waking up to that fucking plastic marionette face every day? This isn't specific to her either. Everyone who gets plastic surgery looks like DC CGI. You know, that really corny fucking DC movie? Yeah, that's what their fucking face looks like. Next we have Leah Mchugh as Sprite, and I enjoyed Sprite. She was another part of the movie that I enjoyed, and again, not necessarily her character arc, but the character herself. She kind of brought a bit of magic to the movie. You know, she brought a bit of fantasy to the movie. Kind of, just her parts, you know, kind of felt like an 80s movie, just slightly. And one thing about her character arc, it was more relatable than a lot of other characters in this movie. And, you know, I stand 5'9", so I'll never know what it's like to actually grow up either, so maybe this is just me, but Sprite was basically stuck in the body of, I don't know, a 14-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl. Sorry, I didn't mean to use gender-specific language, but she craved the human experience. So, in a film where we're introducing 10 or 11 main characters, not to mention the rest of the cast, Sprite was easy to empathize with and gravitate to. You got it. She's never gonna grow up. She's never gonna have a boyfriend. She's never gonna get that first kiss. She's never going to truly blend in with this society that she's been stuck with for what, 5,000 years, 7,000 years? She's never going to get to experience certain things with him. She can only stay in one spot for so long before the humans realize she's not growing up. So she's constantly having to move around. And, you know, it's not a fun life. So you've got the rest of the Eternals who look adult, and then she's stuck in this preteen/young teen body, and she never gets the human experience like the rest of them. Plus, she added a bit of heart and magic to this movie. So, again, one of the few good things about this movie. But next, we have Brian Tyree Henry as Phastos, and Phastos is a galactic diversity hire. If a 7,000-year-old godlike being wants to get dick down, that's his own prerogative, but how are human beings different or special enough to disrupt the cycle of the universe when they're too dumb to invent a fucking plow? Phastos is supposedly responsible for mankind's technological advancements and great leaps forward throughout our history as a species, making humans seem somewhat lesser. And trust me, humans, we can go pretty low. And it's not that I'm offended, I just think when you're trying to pander to humans, maybe that could be considered dumb writing. And by the way, the whole rapid expansion of 1940s Germany and the whole genocide thing, all that is totally cool with Phastos, but how dare Americans try to put a stop to it? Just, I'm done with humans after that. Yeah, well, fuck you, dude. Us dropping the A-bomb is the real crime in Fatso's eyes, and that's what made him give up on humans. So fuck you, Phastos, you perverted prick. Okay, the Eternals are manufactured, correct? So, in Erishem's eyes, the manufacturer, their mouths are nothing more than speakers and their ears must be microphones, right? And listen, Lauren Ridloff, she is a beautiful woman and a fine actress. I mean, she's sitting there speaking American Sign Language, but her expressiveness, I mean, it didn't take from the film at all. She was great in her role, but maybe, just maybe incorporate her into the MCU in a role other than an Eternal, because she would have been deemed defective by Arishem, right? She's basically a robot. If something's broken on the robot, why would you fucking use it when you can just make another robot that works? It's like, and look, you can label me anything you want. If you have an iPhone and the microphone isn't working, are you just going to keep it so you can be deemed brave and stunning by your peers? It literally, just in the view of Arishem, it makes no sense why she was here in the first place. And again, that's not how I view her, but if I were the creator, if I were God of the universe, and these were nothing but robots to me, I might think, hey, this one's fucking broken, let's at least make another one or fix it! So it doesn't make sense to keep her around, right? This is only one minor inconsistency in a lazily written plot full of holes, because Marvel were too busy proving to themselves that they aren't awful people, rather than focusing on creating the best product that they are able to produce. Next, we have Barry Keoghan as Adolf. Druig, and Druig is the scariest character in this film, because not only does he have the ability to control the minds of humans, and not just one human at a time, but we've seen him control an entire village before, and who knows how many more he can control. But Druig is also your classic authoritarian who thinks the world should be as he sees fit, and he's willing to act on those thoughts, and he's portrayed as a good guy. He's portrayed as a protagonist. That's a scary mindset, especially with that power. Druig could have the ability to make an entire army walk off a cliff like lemmings. This is a lot of power, and yet he sees men with guns, and the first thing he says,
well, that's too powerful of a weapon for them. This is just too powerful.
And he tries to use his mind control to get them to give up their only fucking weapons. Let me guess, Druig.
I'll keep you safe.
Right? Just trust Druig, man. He'll keep you safe, he promises. Druig is like the window into the mind of the dark part of humanity. To a certain section here in the United States and all across Western civilization that think they know what is best for you. And even though I've got this massively powerful weapon at my hands, that gun? No, that's too dangerous for you.
You better hand it over.
Well, you know what, Druig? The pathway to hell is paved in good intentions, and you, sir, exemplify that fact. And lastly, for the Eternals, I believe there are so many of them it's hard to keep track, but I believe the last one is Ma Dong-seok as Gilgamesh, who lived. Gilgamesh died, and we as the audience saw one of those things. So there's really not much that I can say about him other than he was strong, he liked the culinary arts, and he seemed to have an affection for Athena that went deeply unexplored. Marvel just expected the audience to understand the relationship between the two, but in my opinion it missed the mark. Gilgamesh's character basically existed to cater to Angelina Jolie's character arc, so when he died, I felt nothing, and the movie felt as if it lost nothing. That isn't Ma Dong-seok's fault either, this goes back to shit writing. I went into this movie thinking that it isn't fair to cheap-shot the Eternals with, why didn't they get involved when Thanos was trying to take out half of all life with quite literal the snap of a finger after being conditioned throughout Infinity War that Thanos must have his fist clenched in order to activate the stones. Surely, it would be explained why the 10 Eternals and Angelina Jolie sat back as millions of not just humans, not just Earthlings, but half of all fucking life in the universe would suddenly cease to exist at a moment's notice. And don't give me that half-assed explanation that Arishem said no getting involved with human affairs unless it involves a deviant. Thanos' plan was like a big fuck you to Arishem. Ajak even mentioned that the blip delayed the emergence, so somebody's failing at their job, right? Arishem, who is made out to basically be God in the MCU, the creator, needs a massive population on various planets in order to birth other Celestials who emerge from these densely populated planets, feeding themselves off the energy of the intelligent life on those planets, killing the entire population in order for the Celestial to live and create new suns and new planets to grow more populations to birth more Celestials, and the cycle goes on. So as it turns out, asking why the Eternals and Angelina Jolie not getting involved with Thanos would not have been a cheap shot at all. It's actually a major plot hole that the writers and Chloe Zhao tried to patch up with our tone band-aids. Thanos is literally erasing half of Arishem's work and heavily disrupting the order of the universe. But because he's not a deviant, everyone is going to stand around with their thumbs up their asses. And then Thanos is purple because he has the deviant gene. Let me guess, it's only the deviant gene. Thanos isn't actually a deviant. His parents are Eternals. You know, Alars, Susan. You know, Eternals. Well, how the fuck does that work? The Eternals are manufactured from Erisham. They're not life. That's why they live together. So how the fuck do they birth life? I used to like Marvel movies because you could rewatch them and really think about what's being presented to you and what will be presented in the future based off of the current story. But now, Feige and staff are producing movies in hopes that we'll just shut off our brains and not think too hard about the shit they're shoveling out for us to consume. And that's only Thanos, by the way. What about other villain attempts to disrupt Erisham's will? Ego the Living Planet thought the grand design was boring and went around fucking planets and planting seeds in the soil of women across the universe. Does that not put a crimp in Erisham's plan? Or Dormammu wanting to take Earth to the Dark Dimension, which we now know is just a birthing pod for the Celestials. So Dormammu is just jacking Erisham's shit and he's not going to do anything about it. If you're a genocidal maniac who carries the deviant gene but is not actually a deviant and your parents are manufactured bots and you want to wipe out half the fucking universe, cool. If you're a fellow Celestial who wants to literally take over all of existence and bring everything to a standstill so you may admire the grandness and beauty that is you, cool. If you're a primordial, interdimensional being who wants to jack someone else's shit, cool. But if you're one of 6 deviants who apparently still exist and don't seem half the fucking threat of the evil we've seen throughout 26 fucking films, then and only then will Erisham and his Eternals get involved, huh? Fuck you! Feige should have fucking been prepared for the interest decline after Endgame. We all knew what was coming. We all knew people wouldn't be as interested after Endgame. There was going to be a bit of a come down. And everyone wants to call this fucking idiot in a hat a damn genius. Well, Phase 4 sure doesn't seem like fucking genius to me. It seemed like he took the first few phases, based them off of comic books for the most part, other people's stories, decade-old fucking stories. And now this is what we got. Feige should have prepared after Endgame. He should have had a fucking plan. And so far, I'm pretty sure every Phase 4 project, including WandaVision, including Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, I'm sure Hawkeye will be shit. Everything is fucking failed so far. It's a house of cards falling down on a convoluted, uninspired empire that has lost touch with any remnants of what connected the audience to the characters being portrayed in the first place. So the simple story of a playboy, billionaire philanthropist who just wanted to build shit, bang hot reporters, and make the world a better place enters its dark and arduous winter.